Hey folks, it's Saturday, and that means it's time for me to talk about an episode of a superhero animated series. Today I will be talking about the episode of Batman the Animated Series titled Mad as a Hatter. I'll be spoiling most of this episode, so if you don't want to hear any of that, then flee now while you still have the chance. This episode begins with Jervis Tetch, an employee at Wayne Enterprises. He's got a crush on, I guess, the secretary, Alice, and he has been inventing this machine that allows him to control another mind, or even multiple minds. When Alice's boyfriend briefly breaks it off with Alice, Tetch takes her out on a date where he controls virtually every person who is part of the date, like waiters and zookeepers, etc. Batman gets wind of this when he tries to stop two guys who tried to rob Tetch from jumping into the Gotham River at Tetch's request. Batman eventually finds Tetch, who has now gone so far as to brainwash Alice's boyfriend into breaking up with Alice when he tried to reconcile with her. And when Alice begins to be suspicious of Tetch, he uses his mind control device on her as well. Batman chases down Tetch to an Alice in Wonderland theme park and is able to triumph over the scoundrel. And so, once again, the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. So, as far as an origin for a villain that you want to see in an ongoing manner, this is not a great one. It reminds me a great deal of Mr. Freeze's origin from this series. It works fine for a single appearance, but the motivation of, I want to get with that pretty girl, isn't really something that can sustain multiple appearances. And yet, I know that the Hatter shows up a few more times in this series. So unless the series tries to give him a brand new motivation for being a villain in his next appearance, then that could be problematic. Heck, it could still be problematic even if they do give him a new motivation. I'll just have to wait and see, I guess. This episode does something that I don't think very many episodes in this series have attempted, in that it seems to be trying to go for, and the moral of this story is, kind of approach. Usually you see the episode show one of the characters learning something, but not so much, and that, kids, is why you shouldn't give in to peer pressure. This episode seems to be showing the dangers of the creepy stalker guy who will go to any length to have the lady that he thinks he's in love with. In this case, the moral of the story seems to be, if she's happy, don't try to push it. You could only end up breaking the friendship that you already have with her. Is this delivered in a little bit of an overly melodramatic way? Sure it is, but superhero stories are often deliberately meant to deliver ordinary stories in a very flashy, over-the-top manner, so I would say this is likely by design. But the use of the episode as a delivery mechanism for telling people not to go all crazy stalker on their friends and coworkers almost makes me doubly sure that the Mad Hatter was a character that should not have been used again as a villain in this series. If all this character is for this episode is a way to tell kids not to be psychopaths, then it makes me feel like he's not so much a worthwhile villain, but is just a tool to teach kids something that I'm not even sure that they need to know. I'm not saying that the lesson here is one that doesn't need to be taught, but the audience for this show is primarily children. Sure, some adults, like myself, can and do watch this show, but it was geared toward children. So I don't exactly see the merit of giving this kind of lesson to the audience for this show. If anything, you'd want to target this lesson to the creepy dudes, and girls I guess, who want to get on with someone who doesn't feel that way about them in return. So put this kind of story in, I don't know, True Blood or something like that. Or maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. Maybe it's not a lesson at all. Maybe it's just an episode that happens to be about a creepy dude who tries to control everything so that he can be with his crush. And maybe that's all it is. Just a story. I don't really know. But if it's not a moral of the story kind of episode, then I wonder what kind of episode it really is. I have talked about before how this series does a couple of different kinds of episodes. Sometimes they do the episode where Batman goes through some kind of character arc. And in other episodes, they do the one where Sherman the annoying kid from I've Got a Batman in My Basement, or Jordan from Be a Clown learn a lesson. And this episode doesn't really seem to be either one. Batman doesn't really change in any way at all by the end of the episode because he's not even in the episode all that much. And Tetch is just as clueless to how obsessive he is at the end and would probably still be trying to kidnap Alice and make love to her or whatever if the giant Jabberwocky statue hadn't fallen on him. This seems to be just one of those episodes where nobody learns a lesson, which I think is why I was so ready to say that this episode is immoral in disguise as an episode, because then, even if it is misplaced, it at least is something, and not an episode where everyone is a static character who goes through no discernible arc by the end. Beyond all of this, I do have to question why Bruce Wayne would be so down for Jervis building a machine that lets him manipulate brainwaves. While the film Batman Forever got a lot of things wrong, it at least showed that Bruce Wayne is fairly sensible in a situation like this. If an employee, even your best, most stable employee, is working on mind control, you put a stop to that nonsense now. What on earth could Bruce Wayne be thinking when he says that the proposal sounded promising? Under what conditions could a machine like this be a good thing? Oh well, I guess it's a quick way to establish a MacGuffin for the story, and an even quicker way to show that Batman's not as smart as we all like to think. Overall, I don't have much else to say about this episode. It's an okay episode, not one of the best, but certainly not one of the worst either. Just kinda there. I am curious if you guys liked the episode. If you did, or if you didn't, be sure to talk about it in the comments below. And if you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I will be back next Saturday to talk about an episode of the Legion of Superheroes cartoon. And the weekend after that, I'll be back here talking about another episode of Batman the Animated Series. And be sure to come back throughout the week to see some of my other videos. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.